Well, good morning, everybody. I have got my 270-gallon tanks in the garage filling. I spent the morning cleaning those. I'm trying to finally get around to having the energy and the okay to stand up long enough to start cleaning some of these tanks. And so I finally got the two 270s cleaned this morning. They're looking much better. And right now they're filling. So I thought this might be a good time, since I'm standing up. One of the biggest issues I have is standing up and then sitting back down and getting back up. So since I'm up, I'm going to do a video standing up, and we're going to look at the two 600s and the smaller tanks I have with a bunch of the Peruvian green terrors in them. This 600 has got Parafestae and a couple ornatums, an Atromaculatum male, and a half a dozen or so of the Peruvian green terrors, the Stahlsbergi. I had three female festi in this tank, but during my absence I have lost some fish due to not being able to take care of them properly, feeding them, what have you. I couldn't go up and down stairs, so my wife's done the best she can during my surgeries and what have you, but with her running around trying to take care of me and getting my medications and the foods and things I needed and taking care of her cats and the house and the fish, she just can't spend as much time and do them as well as I can. So there were some losses. A couple of the female festis in this tank died, and they died from being attacked by the male. This pair has tried to spawn. Actually, they have spawned 3 times, but the eggs have not hatched. They've always fungused over. But the pair, the last couple times during this absence, one by one, they eliminated the other 2 females. Basically, they killed them. So that was a bummer. But there were some other losses I had too. In the other room, I lost several of the Solanum in my big tank, and then in the 1,000-gallon tank, unfortunately, I lost that big black Gorillas blue umbi. I have no idea why. My wife just told me one day that it was laying dead. The day before, it was eating perfectly fine, and whatever reason, again, not being able to come down the stairs and stuff, it is what it is. And I lost maybe half the population of my Solanum. In the other 270, I still have a good sizable population in there. I think, looking at what I've got left, I probably lost the more, some of the older ones that maybe couldn't handle the lack of water changes, and maybe my wife fed too much food, not enough food, things like that. Solanum are one of the more tricky fish to keep. A lot of people have trouble with them. And that's actually one of the reasons I've kept them for so long, because I tried to keep a significant population so people can get them, because they are not a super readily available fish, at least here in the Pacific Northwest. Anyway, so those were most of the losses. Most of the other fish came through it pretty well. And like I said, I'm finally able to start moving around enough to start doing my tanks. I got my 270s done today. I got the 1,000 done yesterday, and I'll be working on these other ones here this weekend. So we're going to go over to this other 600 now while I'm walking around. And really the primary reason for this video today was I had told everybody, since I've got a lot of free time on my hands, not being able to go outside, exercise, what have you, for about a month, I would have more time to do videos. And if anybody had questions, to ask them, and I'll do my best to address them on videos. So the first question I had was from Steve, and Steve had asked me what I thought about UV sterilizers. And this is, of course, the Amphilophus tank with the male Dovi, which you see over here by some of the chanchos. I would guess this male is now pushing 20 inches. He's a spectacular fish, got lots of blue, lots of coloring. He is probably the least aggressive Dovi I've ever had at this size. And again, I've talked about that several times, why that might be the case. But in any case, he's doing just great in this tank. Obviously, he goes where he wants, but he has not really harmed any fish. And we've got I believe, a pair of chanchos back here attempting to spawn. I think you can see the female back there. And there is the male that she is getting ready to spawn with. This is one of the caves I've got for them that they can get in, but the Dovite cannot. So in any case, Steve had asked about UV sterilizers and what I thought about them. And, that's a good question. First, let's talk about what a UV sterilizer is intended to do. Really, in an aquarium, it's really for bacteria and algae control when you get right down to it. They can be helpful in controlling infections by stopping the spread of microorganisms, but they really don't do anything for controlling organisms that are attached to fish. So primarily bacteria and algae control. They can be useful for fungus and protozoas, but not at the normal rates that most UV sterilizers. It needs a much more intense bulb, a higher dwell time, and all that kind of stuff for a UV to be effective on anything much beyond bacteria and algae. So, as far as UVs are concerned, I have just one. I have one on my 1,000-gallon tank. I primarily put it on because that was my, my dream tank, and I pretty much threw every bell and whistle onto the thing that I could think of that I might have wanted over the years. None of my other tanks have UV or have never had UV, and I can't really say that I've noticed a significant difference in anything with the 600s or any of my other tanks versus the 1,000 that does have a UV. So I guess it comes down to this. It depends on really your resources, how much money you have to spend in the hobby. If you have limited resources or you just don't want to spend go crazy, I would rather see you spend the money that it takes to buy a good quality UV sterilizer, and of course the bulbs the bulbs that you're going to have to continue to replace, and those bulbs, by the way, they always say, oh, they're good for about 6 months. In reality, they should really be changed about every 3 months if you want maximum effectiveness. And some of those bulbs are pretty pricey. I think the one for the 1,000 I have runs around $100. So you're talking anywhere from $200 to $400 a year for bulbs just for the one tank, if you want it to be truly effective. And then, of course, you also need to make sure that the sleeve that the bulb is in is very, very clean, because even if you replace the bulb and the sleeve is full of slime and what have you, it's not going to work very well. That thing needs to be crystal clear to really do its job. But like I was going to say, because of the cost, I would rather see people spend their money on better filtration. Filtration is much more important, especially for these big cichlids, than UV sterilization is. If you were going to plunk down maybe $500 on a UV sterilizer and the bulbs for the course of a year, that money would be much better spent on a second canister filter, or a much higher quality canister filter, or a sump, or whatever filtration method you prefer to do. But again, if it's one of those, I've got all the money in the world and I just want to put every possible tool in the kit, so to speak, on the tank, then there's definitely no harm in adding UV. But I think the benefits are fairly minimal for cichlids, especially the big Centrals and South Americans. Now, if you have more fragile fish, that are not cichlids, maybe that's a bigger issue. But for hardy fish with the massive water changes and what have you, I personally don't think it's necessary. And there are a couple of things, if you do get a UV sterilizer, you might want to consider. If you do decide to get a UV sterilizer, I would strongly recommend that you wait at least a year if you've set up a new tank to get one. The reason for that is you want to make sure that your tank has got a nice mature bed of beneficial bacteria and it's done cycling. And the UV sterilizer, when you first set it in the system, it's all brand new and it's got a nice good bulb. It is going to kill whatever bacteria you can find, good or bad, and so it'll make the cycling of the process take a lot longer, and that actually may cause more harm to your fish than the benefits the UV sterilizer will provide. You can see this pair of Midas or Red Devils. I've been through that before too. If you want to see my thoughts on that, check out a different video. But anyway, they are trying to spawn in this corner. They've dug a pit, and you can see the big dovii come by. The only thing the dovii has done as a negative in this tank is he has impacted the fish's abilities to spawn freely once he's got this size. Many a time I'll see a pair of chanchos, devils, what have you, pick a spot, maybe by a rock, remove all the gravel, and then get ready to spawn, and then the dovii comes by and kind of breaks them up, so to speak. And these guys are going to go back and try it again and go back to their corner, but every so often the dovii comes by and sort of prevents that from happening. So that's about the only negative impact so far I've had on this tank. And quite frankly, I've spawned enough Red Devils, dovies, Midas, chanchos to where to me it's not that much of a negative impact at this moment. If I really wanted to spawn some more, I could easily just pull a pair out and put them in a smaller tank and they'd spawn right away. Anyway, back to the UV. The only other thing I was going to suggest was, besides the bacteria issue with cycling a new tank, there's so much talk these days about how important gut bacteria is for people. And I'm sure you guys, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a scientist. I do read that kind of stuff, and I try to keep current on some of the current ideas. But there's thoughts now that cancers are related to the gut bacteria we have in our systems, and a whole host of evidence that things like Alzheimer's and all kinds of negative things are related to the lack of a proper gut bacteria. So with that in mind, I make a leap of logic that it's possible that a UV sterilizer could have a negative benefit in tanks by reducing the population of bacteria in the tank and perhaps altering the gut bacteria that is naturally found in our fish. And that can lead to stress, bloating, all kinds of things. So I suppose that is a very broad leap, but there is, I think, a logical argument to be made that may be an issue as we find out more and more about what gut bacteria really is and all the significant roles it plays in lives. Now, obviously, if it affects humans to that degree, it's affecting fish and other animals as well. Anyway, that's my thoughts. I hope all is well for everybody, and I will go to the next question here in a few days. Take care, everybody.